Well, come on. We're talking about the Eastern Conference Finals with him. Hawks are there. And they will play game one tomorrow night against the Milwaukee Bucks. So he will join us. Also, Rich Stiles, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show, will join us. John Rahm with the U.S. Open win. And, of course, we'll put out the results of our kind of snake draft that we put together last week for the U.S. Open. That's always a lot of fun. Also, Dan Murphy, ESPN.com. He had the story yesterday of the Supreme Court's decision on education-related benefits for student athletes in the NCAA. What does that mean? He will join us, and we'll ask him some of those hard-hitting questions about the Supreme Court decision yesterday and how it affects student athletes. Also, he's got a story up today, just as an aside, on Jake Olson. Some of you may remember his story. Long snapper for Southern Cal who got in, made a perfect snap on an extra point, and he's blind. And you say, well, that was several years ago. It was, but now Jake Olson is the co-founder of a company set to help student athletes out with name, image, and likeness. So a lot of interesting things happening there. We'll talk to Dan Murphy coming up in hour number 2 about that and more. But yesterday, the Braves, BJ and Ben, did what they needed to do, which is, okay, you got DeGrom, it happens, and then you win the next one. And that was really all that mattered yesterday, and Ronald Acuna does it again. And I think he won the second game for the Braves in a 1-0 game where the only run was his home run. I don't know how many times it's happened in baseball history that you've won 2 games off one guy's solo homer in consecutive days, but Ronald Acuna is now on that short list.
Yeah, pretty impressive, obviously, from Ronald Acuna, the guys that went out there and pitched for the most part. Ian Anderson was great. But, yeah, Kevin, I agree with you. In terms of a 2-game series with the Mets, who are the division leader on the road, including facing Jacob deGrom in a season that, I mean, Kevin, are we talking about potentially one of the greatest seasons, if not maybe the greatest season in modern baseball history for a pitcher? And I know a lot of that will be determined by what happens in the postseason, but at least right now, with an ERA around a half a run, it's ridiculous. And we were talking about this in the show meeting, and I think everybody heard it yesterday. It's a stat that's making the rounds. Jacob deGrom, who is a pitcher, of course, and only gets an opportunity to hit once every 5 days. And then when he does hit, you're thinking about 2, maybe 3 at-bats before you get replaced. And in theory, remember, that's not supposed to be what he's good at. Jacob deGrom has more RBI this season than runs allowed as a pitcher. As of right now, Jacob deGrom has 6 RBI. He has given up 4 earned runs. That is inexplicable. And Kevin compared it to, playing video games on the easy level. Yeah, I agree. It's absurd. So I know people would have loved if the Braves could have swept the Mets yesterday, made up a game with deGrom on the mound, and you have a rookie. And I thought Kyle Mueller did a really good job, but that's not a matchup you're going to win. And then for Atlanta to bounce back, you get the great start from Ian Anderson, Ronald Acuna going to center field with great power. I thought it was a good day yesterday. Big game tonight with Charlie Morton and Marcus Stroman, a couple of guys with 6 wins. But I'm with you. I think yesterday you take that, you're happy about it, you move forward.
Yeah, of course you take that. I mean, it's not too many times that you're gonna make a start in baseball and somebody goes, "Who's pitching?" and somebody go, "Oh, the Braves. Oh, they got DeGrom. Oh, okay." I mean, when I saw DeGrom's ERA yesterday, I thought it was a glitch. I'm like, that's wrong, right? That says 0.5. Like, he doesn't give up. Forget a run. He gives up half. I don't even know what half a run is when a real person is swinging the bat. But I mean, Kevin, kind of follow what BJ said. Is this a where were you moment when you're talking about what he's doing? Because look, we're spoiled when you're talking about being Braves fans, seeing some of the best pitchers on the same team. But when you look at what the Mets, when you look at what deGrom is doing, when you're talking about when they at one point they had Syndergaard and Harvey and they had the superhero looking pitchers, what deGrom is doing. Number one, we talking about what Ronald Acuna did to win game 2. He went right at Acuna. Like the first 3 pitches, all he kept doing was shaking his head no, telling the catcher, nope, I'm finna give him the heater. He knows it's coming. I know it's coming. But what deGrom is doing, and people talking about dominance, in professional sports, that is not something that happens a lot. And sometimes when it comes to a pitcher, you talk about, Kevin, like we said, what is it about Fried and Ian Anderson and Mike Soroka when he comes back is, can they do it at a consistent level? Now, that can't be the barometer. Like deGrom can't be the barometer when you talk about the fact that, I mean, 0.54 ERA, that's almost unhuman-like type stuff. But he is beautiful to watch when you talk about, and obviously we're going to get to it, Kevin, with the whole foreign substance now. It's crazy that they take the best pitcher in baseball. They did everything but pat him down before he went to the freaking coming out the dugout. But I think yesterday, two things were on display. You got to see the best pitcher in baseball, bar none, and you got to see one of the best up-and-coming players, Ronald Acuna Jr. in Game 2. And I think that when you look at where baseball is going, BJ, DeGrom has won me over. It is about starting pitching. It is. But I do think that if the barometer is 0.5 for ERA, what? Is that even possible? Yeah. There's a guy by the name of Jake DeGrom who's doing it now. I hope he keeps it up. It's going to be hard to keep it up. But yesterday both games were beautiful to watch.
Hey, man, there's just times, I think, when you play sports where you look at the guy across the way and say, to steal a quote from BJ, it is what it is. Like, look, that guy is so good, and not that we aren't, but he's otherworldly right now. I kind of envision that to, LeBron James when he was at his peak, Kobe Bryant when he was at his peak. It's like, look, man, we're doing all we can do, and it still isn't. It's not even enough. But what he's doing is, as BJ and you have both said, it doesn't even make sense. You look at the era in which you're playing, where guys are going up to the plate. Yeah, they strike out more, but guys are going up to the plate trying to hit the ball out of the ballpark. They're trying to hit doubles off the wall. And this cat has a 0.54. As a pitcher, we're trying to let pitchers not hit, right? That's like the whole campaign for all the DH loving guys. We don't want pitchers to hit. He's got more RBIs than runs allowed. And this guy bats twice a week, and he's not named Shohei Ohtani. Like that's, and what Shohei Ohtani does is also ridiculous. But what Jake DeGrom is doing is, the only way to describe it is stupid, because it makes no sense at all when you look at it. When you say the major league average for a starter in ERA right now is just over 4 runs, and he's at half a run.
Yeah, and Kev, let me share this. I don't know if you saw this, but I just wanted to get your reaction to this, because to that point, I believe I heard on the broadcast yesterday, one of the announcers, and if I'm wrong, I apologize, but I believe I heard them say that if Jacob DeGrom went out in his next start, okay, gave up 27 runs, earned runs, and did not get an out. So you go 0.0 innings and you give up 27 runs, he would still be right at that 4.1 ERA mark for the season.
I mean, again, that's insane. And he doesn't show any signs of slowing down. Usually you think, somebody's going to have a slump. I mean, we're nearly 3 months into this bad boy, and nobody's been able to figure him out at this point. I mean, that is dominance. And I look back at the day, like my favorite pitcher of all time, Greg Maddux. And even in some of Greg Maddox's best years, you go, well, what was his ERA? His ERA was, 1.98, 2.12, things like. He's way below that. Again, we are coming up to a point where in a couple of weeks we are going to be at the All-Star break. And BJ, if what you said is accurate, he could have 2 or 3 quote horrendous starts per his standards, and his ERA might not be 2 at that point. I mean, that's where he's at. And again, nobody has been able to figure this guy out. And if you're a Braves fan, if you're anybody, and you walk to the ballpark and it says for the Mets, Jake DeGrom, hey man, hope we get him in the bullpen. That's all you can do right now, because he is so filthy, and he is 100. I think he struck Acuna out on a 101 mile an hour pitch yesterday. So he's 100 mile an hour with the heat. He's got some devastating off speed stuff. I mean, it's all you can do to go up there and say, hey, I gave it a shot, man. That's all I can do. And I mean, I guess relatively Marcus Stroman will look like, I don't know, Drew Smiley out there tonight as opposed to what they saw yesterday.
Well, I wanted to ask both of you guys this, because I think we're at an interesting spot here in the NL East, right, where it was important that Atlanta got that win last night, because that's a 2-game flip in the standings, and Atlanta right now, I believe, is 5 games back. I think that is manageable. That's not overwhelming. You start getting to 7, 8, that's concerning, even for where we are here. how do you kind of view the next two games? I mean, would you be okay? I know it's a 4-gamer in New York, so maybe if you split with the division leader at home, that's something you can manage, especially given that you had to have a rookie essentially start one game. But tonight you have Charlie Morton against Marcus Stroman. I just looked. Tomorrow you have Max Fried, and I don't think the Mets have announced yet what they're doing on Wednesday. Is this something where you really need to win 2 games here, or is this something where if you split the series, you feel like you did okay and you still have some momentum moving forward?
Yeah, I think split. I mean, to me, coming into this series, it was just keep pace, right? I mean, there's sometimes when you're running a race, it's not so much, hey, I need to take the lead. It's just don't lose them, right? I mean, you see that in Ben. You were a track guy. You run it. It's like sometimes when you're running a race, it's not you need to pass them. It's just don't let them get away from you, right? To keep them within distance. And I think that's what this series is all about for the Braves. If you make up a game, great, but just keep the Mets in distance and don't let them pull away from you a little bit. That's what it's all about. Yesterday, mission accomplished.
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes too. I mean, if I could see, who's in front of me, and you give me a chance to let me know I'm still in the race. If the person started a race with me, I'm running by people saying, "Hey man, how far is he away?" Well, it's probably over. You don't got to deal with the ground no more. I mean, BJ and Kevin, I'm just looking at the crowd yesterday. When the ground game over here, people like, oh man, like somebody hit the. It's almost like that doesn't happen. But I do think that we knew that this NL East was going to be very, very competitive. Pre-All-Star and post-All-Star. I do agree though, BJ. You know what the barometer is. At this point, you ain't giving yourself. Right now, you have a little breathing room. You want to keep breathing room. You don't want to start suffocating yourself before All-Star because, as Kevin always say, it's a race to the finish. It's you counting healthy bodies towards the end of the season because that's when guys start flaring up hamstrings, different things. So you want to give yourself something to smile at going into the All-Star break, not, hey, man, we might be scratching and clawing just to make this thing a respectable season at this point.
Yeah, man, I think tonight it's all about trying to get one over on Stroman. If you can do that, that's a confidence builder. Hey, we can beat good pitching. I think DeGrom's just otherworldly right now, and it is what it is. So I think that's the approach coming into the next couple of games is, hey, let's go have good at-bats, try to knock off some great pitching, and hopefully Charlie Morton and Max Fried can play the part for you. And last time out, Charlie Morton looked really good. Max Fried, maybe he's finding a little something for you. And if that happens, I think maybe you feel better about yourself heading into late June. We've got so much to get to here on the show. We'll hear from Dan Murphy, ESPN. Great piece yesterday on the Supreme Court decision. We'll get the ins and outs of what does that mean for college football now that decision was rendered yesterday by the Supreme Court. He'll join us coming up in hour number 2. We'll talk some U.S. Open with Rich Stiles. John Rahm, unbelievable finish coming down the stretch, wins it. And McLean Baxley, AJC, will join us. He's covering Hawks and Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals. Who would have thought? He will join us coming up in about 20 minutes. But speaking of DeGrom, he was one of the first to fall under the new rules of Major League Baseball. What do we expect moving forward? It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Great to be here on this Tuesday. McLean Baxley going to join us coming up in about 15 minutes. We'll talk some Hawks basketball with him. Eastern Conference Finals await game 1 tomorrow against the Milwaukee Bucks. But yesterday we mentioned Jacob deGrom. He was the first to kind of fall under the new MLB crackdown of the foreign substances. He was, I think, the first pitcher to take the mound. Umpires met him before he went to the mound, took his hat, his glove, belt, looked at his hands, make sure he wasn't using anything, and let him go. And if that's what you got with nothing, BJ and Ben, I'd hate to see what you got with something on your fingers in that way. But obviously, that's the crackdown has started. Any pitcher that is caught with this going to get a 10-day suspension. They cannot be replaced on the roster, so you're down a player during those 10 days. And I think what everybody's interested to see is what effect does this have on Major League Baseball. You're already seeing the StatCast nerds who are out there talking about spin rate and launch angle and all that, but looking at, since this goes into effect, how does spin rates change on certain pitchers, on a lot of pitchers out there, and what the causations potentially might be, BJ. So, again, how widespread is it? Well, we'll find out if there's a widespread decrease potentially in spin rate across Major League Baseball if earned runs go up, batting averages go up, and, strikeouts start to go down.
Yeah, this has been a lot to process. And I'll be honest, Kevin, I know you're more in tune with kind of the day-to-day realities of baseball, but for me, I didn't know the scale, the scope of this. I didn't know the kind of impassioned perspectives you would have in some cases. And obviously you want to eliminate cheating. You want to eliminate competitive advantages. It was a little kind of unique, I guess. And you understand it. You understand why baseball is doing what it's doing. But just as a viewer to see, even in a replay or for a minute, hey, like you mentioned, Ben, here's Jacob deGrom. All right, take your hat off. All right, we're inspecting your hat. All right, let me see your glove. Let me see your fingers. All right, flip your belt buckle, over or whatever. And you're checking for all the substances. And, you've heard all kind of perspectives from, right? You had a pitcher for the Rays say, hey, this is why I got hurt, because I throw a lot of breaking balls and I need, or in the past I've been able, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, but, to have some sort of a different grip situation, and now I don't. And then you've had others who are saying, look at the numbers, offensive production in baseball, at least from a average standpoint, is not where it was. Like you said, if you have somebody that can throw, you have probably 4, 5, 6 guys on every pitching staff in baseball that can throw 99, 98, 100. And, potentially if you add sort of a synthetic element of control to that, what is the potential impact? I'm with you. I think everybody's going to be looking at spin rates and probably overreacting in some respects to small sample sizes. And then we'll see, we'll see what happens when we have more data. And yes, it will be very telling, very interesting. I guess for me, and I'll ask both of y'all this because this has been something I've learned about more intimately over the last couple of weeks. So we're talking about a current climate where maybe I don't know, maybe it was unwritten, but in the past, maybe it was okay or considered kind of within the elasticity, there's one of my words, Kevin, of the rules to kind of rub a little sunscreen on the ball, or maybe, have, a little sunscreen on your hand or who knows, I don't know, a little chalk. I don't know. But there was, at least, I guess, in baseball at one point, an understanding that some of that or a little bit of that was at least wink, wink, okay. And now it's no, none of it is okay. And I guess, so are we waiting to see what happens to kind of gauge what the next move is? Or do you think baseball has reached a point where it's under no circumstances at all is anything allowed, and that's how it's going to be for the future, and that's for the betterment of the game?
Well, I mean, ideally, you would love it if everybody just did what they could do on their own merits, right? I mean, that's kind of why we watch sports, right? I mean, we like to see Tom Brady throw passes, and we like to think he's not enhanced doing so. We like to see guys run 4.40s, and we like to think they're not enhanced doing so. We like to see guys, dunking basketballs, and we like to think they're not enhanced doing so. We like to see 100-mile-an-hour pitchers, nasty sliders, home runs. We like to think guys aren't enhanced doing so. So I think Major League Baseball's really trying to crack down on it now. Now, do they have ulterior motives with a CBA around the corner? Hey, maybe. But look, I think this has gotten to the point where it was utterly absurd. And I think that's where leagues get into trouble when it's happening and everybody's like, oh, this is definitely happening. Why is nobody's like, and I remember over the past several years, you've had national writers, not even like wink, wink, like actively saying like, look, there's mass cheating going on the mound. Everybody knows it and nobody says anything, right? Because then you're the guy in the box going, oh, he's just complaining because he's hitting 220 that we're out here cheating. So, I mean, this is not a new thing. I think it's one of those things where it's gotten so patently absurd that you see good pitchers become great pitchers become elite pitchers potentially with this stuff. And you're going, if everybody knows this is happening, why is nobody saying anything? And now you've got videos on Twitter, YouTube out there. Watch this. Hey, here's pitcher X. Notice every time he pitches in each of these 35 pitches, he goes right back to the glove, right back to the glove, right back to the glove. I mean, it's so many obvious things that are potentially out there that I think it got to the point where if you look at Major League Baseball, it's just like, really? Like, we would rather you just say we don't care or you're going to have to do something. And I think that's where it gotten with Major League Baseball, where it's like kind of patently obvious that pretty much everybody was doing something on the mound of some kind. And it was either going to be like, just say you don't care, or you're going to have to crack down on some of this. And obviously we see what Major League Baseball is doing. Yeah,
I think that right now the pitches are up. I think that when you, like you said, Kevin, you're going from good to great real fast. It's not an overtime thing. I even asked you, Kevin, I'm like, there was a lot of complete games this year, man. I mean, it's a lot. I don't know what the record was for the most complete games in the season, but I remember like every other week, like breaking news, complete game, like what? And I think that sometimes, right? I mean, I will say this. Being a former professional athlete, it's hard to beat these dudes. Like, I don't think they're not doing it because they're not good enough. Okay, yesterday they're going to run Acuna. Then you got Soto. Then you got Harper. Then you got Trout. Then you got Lindor. Then you got Mookie. These people, you got the pitcher out there with the Angels. He pitches and can hit bombs. I need something. You put us all together. You know, we all relatively the same athletically. What else can I do? Once again, this has less to do with pitchers in the major leagues and more to do with this is what pitchers do. They do it. I mean, and all I'm saying is that there's a reason why. Somebody goes, okay, now, Kevin, let's take it the other way. All right. Now you got guys got 30-some home runs at the All-Star break. They're going to do something all the time. I remember when I first got into the NFL, you could mug guys for 5 yards. Now you got to give them, after 5 yards, you got to let them go. Can't hit a quarterback high, can't hit a quarterback. It's always going to be stuff. But I will tell you this. You know, if pitchers been doing this so long, if they get caught, it's their fault. Dude, if you don't know how to get around the rules by now, you're on national TV doing this. So if they catch you, meaning if you listen, you better have sunscreen coming all off your face and your hand. It can't just be coming off on the hand. No, but my hands. No, man, no. So I think that for me, the reason why they do DeGrom first is to let every other pitcher know, we're going to do you right. If we patting him down, that's a trickle effect. But I think it's much to do about nothing, because there's a difference in cheating and competitive edges. There is a huge difference in that stuff. If your favorite athlete really told you what they did, you wouldn't believe them because you didn't catch them. That don't mean they're not doing it. Now, what the Astros did, that was creative, but they got caught. And then everybody, oh, look at them. No. I don't think what the Astros did was the only team that they just was sophisticated with it. I don't like it when you're trying to reshape if I learn the game of football a certain way, you think you're going to take it away from me because you're willing to fine me? No, I'm going to just take the fine because this is how I got here. So all of a sudden I'm supposed to just go up against Ray Lewis straight up. Hell no, I need something. Have you seen this dude? So I'm thinking that, the pitchers can deal with it. Now, whoever gets caught, they're going to start asking other pitchers, is this what you do? Do you just, no, I don't do none of that. I don't even wear I wear lotion. I don't even wear suntan, because, that makes your hands a little bit more. It happens, Kevin and BJ. I just think that, and this is not to get on people, but do you know how hard it is to make it in the pros? Do you know how hard it is to be at your best against these dudes week in? And if you're a pitcher, if you're doing, they wanted to catch the Grom so bad. They're like, he got look at what he's doing.
No, Major League Baseball doesn't want to catch the Grom. They want to catch somebody to make an example of. They don't want to catch the Grom. They don't want to catch the car guys.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Let me ask you this, because you mentioned, yes, people are going to be paying attention to the advanced stats and the spin rates and all that over the next couple of weeks, certainly the next couple of months. I mean, do you think we see a significant, I guess, bounce back in offensive production? What is kind of your – I mean, there's no way to know. And, I mean, how do you think baseball responds to the response that the data gives?
Well, I mean, I think we know what the response would be like. Hey, man, there's obviously a large change in data. You either play stupid or, I mean, we've seen leagues come out and say, well, I mean, obviously we'll continue to look at the data. But I mean, I think here's what will be telling. If a lot of good pitchers become mediocre in the second half, you could blame it on, well, he's just regressed a little bit or having it. No, I mean, if a guys who are having a good first half all of a sudden don't have it, I mean, that seems to be pretty self-explanatory there that, hey, obviously what changed other than we're checking for it now. So I think that's what I'm looking for more than spin rates. And if guys start getting hit more, hey, that might be good for the game, but maybe why is it that slider is sharp? Why isn't that slider is tight? Why isn't that curveball is tight? Why is it spinning less? Which obviously the more spin, the harder the break you can get. Well, why is it not as tight? Well, maybe it's because a little added something isn't there anymore. And again, I think the only time will tell on this as you evaluate. I don't think one start potentially is indicative of it, but if you see a consistent pattern of this guy is nowhere near what he was doing 2 weeks ago, it's pretty self-explanatory to me. We'll come back. We've got more to come. We'll talk Hawks, Bucks, Eastern Conference Finals start tomorrow night. McLean Baxley, AJC will join us next here on 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. And we are all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, online, ESPNCoastal.com. You can also follow us streaming live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well here each and every day. What we know tomorrow, game one of the Eastern Conference Finals taking place, Hawks and Bucks. Hawks in the Eastern Conference Finals, I believe just the fourth time since they moved to Atlanta back in the 60s. Joining us here from the HAC, McLean Baxley steps in to talk all about it. McLean, welcome. How are you?
Doing great.
Before we talk about the Bucks, just how incredible were the Hawks in that 76ers series? I've seen a lot of things stated. I think Ben Simmons took 3 shots in the fourth quarter, the second half, the entirety of the series. You really clamped down on the 76ers in the second half throughout the series. I mean, how incredible was that to get us where we are now?
Yeah, it was insane. Coming after that, games 2 and 3 where, Philadelphia definitely looked like the better team. They were using that size, using that athleticism to really dominate the Hawks, win by, 10 plus. Some of the Hawks switched and they were able to win, 3 of the last 4 games and obviously with the series. And yeah, I mean, that game 7 was insane. They came out that first half and were definitely the better team. I think they were a little, frustrated they didn't win it at home Friday night in game 6 and, able to, flip the switch and win in Philadelphia, a place that's not easy to win.
We've seen Trae Young become a superstar. At this point, is he a top 20, top 15, maybe even player in the NBA? Where would you kind of rank him big picture right now with the way he's playing and kind of what he's done the last couple of weeks?
I mean, I think each game, each series, he's gotten better and really, become the face of the Hawks and, one of the faces of the NBA. He's a top 15, top 20 player for sure. I mean, I think you saw that this series, especially whether he was scoring, 25 plus points or, like in game 7 where he didn't have a great night scoring, he was able to dish it and still, warrant presence from and defensive pressure from the Sixers. And you can't just leave him unguarded because eventually he would have started hitting those shots, hitting those threes and, making those lanes. And, I think he's definitely warranted the respect from, guys across the league and, media members, fans alike. I mean, he's definitely made a name for himself these playoffs.
How much has this team grown up in just 2 series? You look at what Atlanta was able to do against the Knicks, who everybody was praising Tom Thibodeau and what he had done with that young Knicks team, and then to go 7 games against a team that had an MVP candidate and a guy like Joel Embiid. I mean, you mentioned Trae Young and his maturity, but just talk about the maturity of this young Hawks team who, let's face it, they definitely ahead of schedule with having an interim head coach right now.
Yeah, I mean, they're 5-2 on the road, which I think is huge. Not just they're not just 5-2, playing in small stadiums. They're 5-2 playing in Madison Square Garden and Wells Fargo Center, which highly regarded as 2 of the hardest places to play in the NBA. And it's a very young team. Only 3 or 4 of these guys have played in NBA playoffs before, prior to a few weeks ago when they opened the series against New York. And each game has just got more confident, more experience. And I think that's shown with the results and also just how they've not broken down, when, stadiums are booing them. And, it seems like, in game 7, immediately when Trae Young got the ball, they were started booing him and, chanting against him. And that didn't rattle them at all. And, they kind of bought into it and played as, NBA team, as a top 4 NBA team, as they, realistically are, as they're, one of the 4 finalists in this year's NBA. So, I mean, it's been impressive to watch the maturation between, the beginning of this season, when they, were 14-20 and then, getting Nate McMillan in the interim role. And since then they've been record-wise, the best record in the NBA. And each game they get more confident and more mature in their game.
McLean Baxley joining us here on 3 and Out. So, McLean, you look at this going into this series, you have Nate McMillan, interim head coach. What are the Hawks thinking with him? Is this something that at this point it's not getting addressed until the end of the season? And is Nate McMillan saying, hey, I'm going to ride this as far as possible, potentially into the free agency market?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a timing thing. I mean, unless he doesn't want to, stay in Atlanta, there's no reason that he won't be in Atlanta, beginning of next season. And it's just a contract thing. They don't want to deal with contracts while they're making a historic run in the playoffs, something that Atlanta hasn't done often. So I think he's definitely earned the title of, head coach of the Atlanta Hawks. But yeah, I mean, unless there's anything, there's any other jobs out there that he might want more, but I mean, he's built a rapport with these guys. Obviously, Trae Young, Kevin Huerter, John Collins have, bought into what he's trying to do, the whole belief thing that he instilled when he came on. So the job is his, in my opinion. And I think that's a large opinion of other media members as well, and a lot of fans as well. So I think it's his job if he wants it, and if not, I don't know what other job out there would be more attractive than this job that you've built up, and this culture that you've built up just in 2 or 3 months.
Looking at this matchup here in the finals, Eastern Conference Finals, I should say, the Bucks are the best rebounding team in the playoffs. Obviously, a lot of size. How can Atlanta sort of counterbalance that when you look at this matchup on paper?
I mean, I think on paper, this is a much better matchup than Philadelphia. I think on paper, Philadelphia had the size advantage and it showed the first 2 or 3 games of the series. With Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, and Ben Simmons just dominating the boards on both sides. And so with this, I mean, sure, on paper they might have a better stats rebounding, but you got to look at who they've gone against. The Nets and I think this matchup plays really well for Atlanta as far as. They got the shot size, they've got the athleticism now to keep up with a very 2-player Bucks team. I think Drew Holiday and Giannis are the 2 guys that are leading this Bucks team, and Atlanta showed they've got a bench that is deep. They were playing 10 guys in the Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, I don't know if that's a record or not, but I mean, it's bizarre. Whereas the night before, the Nets played 6 guys in their Game 7. So it's a very bench-led team that really balances out, Trae Young and John Collins and Clint Capella. So it's going to be interesting to see. But I think, Atlanta definitely has to feel comfortable where they are right now.
Yeah. Even sticking with that, McLean. When you think about the pressure that's on Milwaukee, this is the series. Obviously, they need to do to get over the hump to make it to the finals. Giannis is Giannis, Holiday is Holiday. Do you think it's about really just frustrating? A guy like Giannis, you're not going to keep him, away from the basket, but does it come down to just forcing him into bad shots, really getting him to the free throw line? Which I don't know if that's a good or bad thing when it take him so freaking long to shoot free throws. But do you think that's going to be the game plan to just frustrate their best player? And force him, to kind of get the ball out of his hands and force other guys to beat him.
I mean, like we talked about earlier, Joel Embiid was a finalist for MVP this year. You won't get much better players than him. And Giannis is the same kind of thing. You're not going to be able to totally, he won't go for 5, 10 points. He's going to have an impact on the game, both rebounding and scoring. And so I think for the Hawks to have success in the series, and especially in Game 1 where they set the tone for the series, they're going to have to, limit the other guys. Let Giannis, have 20, 25 points, 10, 15 rebounds. But as long as the other guys aren't also having 20, 25 points, you should be all right. And that's something that worked in their 4 wins against Philadelphia. Sherry and Joel Embiid had 30 plus points in most of the game, but the other guys, the role players and the bench players and the supporting cast did not live up to what Joel was doing, and they need to do the same against Giannis and the Bucks.
McLean Baxley, AJC joining us here on 3 and Out. McLean, you look at that same scenario for the Hawks. I feel like Trae Young's going to figure out a way to get his. Who needs to be that X factor for the Hawks? I know Kevin Huerter stepped up a couple of games big in the 76ers series. Who needs to be that X factor for the Hawks to help get them over the top?
I think the big thing is John Collins. He's a guy that he's had good games this playoffs, but hasn't had a consecutive and consistent series. Like I said, he's had spurts where, against the 76ers, he had, I think, like 18-plus rebounds. He had 16 rebounds in Game 7 against the Sixers on Sunday night, and to go with 14 points, and that's good. But he's a guy that's still kind of fighting for that contract, and a guy that has the ability to take over games. And like you said, going against Giannis, I'm sure he's going to be guarding him. Him and Capella doing the similar kind of double team like they did with Embiid. Collins and Capella are 2 guys that definitely need to step up to complement and give those extra possessions for the Hawks. And because like we saw in Game 6, you're not going to be able to score 23 pointers a game every night. And so getting those extra possessions, getting those fast breaks and slowing the game down to what the Hawks want to do, it's going to be crucial. So that's where John Collins and Clint Capella really need to step up against this Bucks team.
Finally, we've seen the Hawks this entire postseason rally down from 15, 20, 20 plus. They seem really comfortable and kind of maintain their aggressiveness and their composure when they're down. Is that sustainable at this point in the playoffs? I mean, will they be able to rally from 18 down against Milwaukee, or the further you move along, do you have to avoid getting down by such notable margins?
It is funny that they play. It seems like they play better with a deficit. You know, we saw in Game 6 Friday night they were up by 10 or 12 and lost the game. So it is kind of funny to see. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's possible to. I don't think it's smart or safe to go into a game knowing that you can go 20, be down by 15 plus and expect to win the game against top 5 team in the NBA. I don't think it's a smart game plan. I mean, I think it's nice that if it happens, you've shown 2 consecutive games against Philadelphia that you can come back from 15 plus, but I don't think it's a sustainable revenue or sustainable venue to get those wins and carry on at least 4 wins here, and then you'd like to see at least 4 wins in the finals if they make it that far. So I think playing with a lead is a lot better than playing with a deficit in every sport ever, I think. So they're going to try and do that as much as possible.
McLean Baxley, AJC.com, joining us here on 3 and Out as he's covering the Hawks and the Milwaukee Bucks series. McLean, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. McLean Baxley joining us here on 3 and Out. Appreciate him joining us. Hawks and Bucks, Game 1 tomorrow night to get things started there. We'll come back. Could we have seen one of the best troll jobs ever in college football? We'll get to that next. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Great to be here on this Tuesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben will chat with Rich Stiles, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show, next hour. Also, Dan Murphy, ESPN, wrote an excellent piece on the Supreme Court decision yesterday that would allow educational benefits, including potentially cash rewards for academic purposes. We'll talk to Dan about that. Also, a name, image, likeness, which is around the corner, as well as a piece up on ESPN.com about that, as well as it relates to former USC long snapper Jake Olson, who's helping athletes with name, image, likeness. But before we step aside to go to next hour, take three around the corner, BJ and Ben, did you see the Lane Kiffin tweet? The Happy Father's Day troll job. There it is. If you're following us online, you can see it. It's a picture of Nick Saban. This is tweeted by Lane Kiffin. It says, Happy Father's Day, and Nick Saban's holding a baby, and the baby has Kirby Smart's face on it.
I love it. I love it. This is why I wanted Lane Kiffin back in the SEC. This is why Lane Kiffin is great for college football, because he's showing that, look, man, if you can't laugh and stuff, everything can't be always professional. Everything can't always be buttoned up. Name me a Georgia fan or an Alabama fan who doesn't think this way. Problem is, it ain't coming from a Georgia fan or a Florida fan. It's coming from Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin says, look, I want to be able to poke fun. I mean, I want to be able to stick Nick Saban's head on the dad and put the Kirby is looking heated too. I'm just saying, it's funny to me, BJ. I know you don't like it. It's all in fun. It's competitive. What?
Oh, no, man. I think it's funny. I think it's funny. I like it. I think it's funny. You look at this, you start laughing. I mean, Kirby Smart's got the visor on. He's the baby. Coach Saban is the. I mean, it's funny.
I guess the rebuttal point would be: should you be posting or poking the bear when you yourself could probably have your face on the baby because you can't beat Nick Saban either?
Well, that's probably what it is. Now I'm gonna say that's probably what it is. Somebody probably already sent him some fans from Alabama that probably sent him some pictures like this. Maybe that was his face right there. He just switched it to Kirby's.
That are we getting deep into the conspiracy theories now on the tweets from Lane Kiffin? But yeah, if you haven't seen that, there it is. You can see it if you're watching us online there as well. Nick Saban holding baby Kirby Smart with a Happy Father's Day card. I think it's pretty funny. We'll take three when we come back. Rich Stiles next hour. Dan Murphy, ESPN.com will join us in hour number 2 as well. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Hit us up on Twitter as well at Pigskin Radio. Great to be here on this Tuesday, hour 2. We are loaded up. Rich Styles, Back Nine Boys Golf Show, will join us in about 15 minutes. We'll look at Jon Rahm, just an unbelievable comeback win at the U.S. Open. Also, Dan Murphy, ESPN.com, looking forward to chatting with him. He had a nice piece yesterday about what the Supreme Court decision means for college football and what it could mean short-term and long-term. Also, he's got a piece up today on name, image, likeness with former long snapper Jake Olson, who you might remember, a blind long snapper for Southern Cal. He's now a co-founder of a business to help with name, image, likeness for college athletes. So a lot of stuff to get to there with Dan Murphy coming up in about 30 minutes here on 3 and Out. So let's get to it. Let's take 3 right now. 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. All right, fellas, Jake DeGrom, we talked about him a little bit. Is Jake DeGrom the best player in baseball? If not, is he the most dominant player in sports right now?
Oh, he's the best player in baseball, yes. These stats are just absurd. And we were going over them back in segment 1, but if you missed, you're talking about a guy that has 6 RBI. Okay, keep in mind he's a pitcher, right? 6 RBI. He's given up 4 earned runs. He has more RBIs than earned runs he's allowed. I got some more numbers. I was looking it up here. Kevin's got 117 strikeouts and 10 walks. 117 to 10. You might say, okay, well, maybe teams aren't scoring on him, but at least they're getting on base. Opponents are batting 113 against Jacob DeGrom. 113. His ERA is half of 1. It is 0.5. Ben, you were saying that earlier in the show, man. It's like normally when if somebody's ERA is like 2.75, they're elite. I think Kevin was saying Greg Maddux, right? His best years, he was around 2, maybe in, the 1.9 range. DeGrom is half of 1. Now, I understand we're not fully through the season yet, and I understand there's a lot of baseball still to come. And, with baseball, a lot of your kind of legacy depends on the postseason. But not only is he the best player in baseball, I haven't seen anything like this. I mean, I know you've had Clayton Kershaw have incredible runs and other guys, but this is absolutely ridiculous. And it's like you said, Ben, watching the game 1 yesterday, if you got a hit or you got a walk, you feel like you were stealing something. You're looking around going, was I even supposed to do this? Like, we got a hit. I don't know how to respond to this. DeGrom is just overwhelming right now.
Yes, the answer is yes and yes, and in a major way. And that's saying something, right? When people start saying, who's the best player in baseball, you don't usually hear a pitcher, right? You hear a guy, you're going to hear like Mike Trout. You can hear Ronald Acuna Jr., Tatis, or Juan Soto, or Lindo. But the thing about DeGrom is he's doing things that people just, it's like fantasy type numbers. Like, yeah, what if you had a guy that had, a less than a hit for, 0.54 ERA? He has more, RBIs and earned runs. You're talking about the fact dominance in a way, Kevin, that's just hard to describe. And it's not like there aren't other great pitchers in baseball right now. It's not like it's him by you still got great pitchers, but I just think that the way in which he's doing it, the manner in which he's doing it, if you're the opposing team, you got to get caught up sometime with just watching him. You know who Jake DeGrom is? He's Unitas of 300. You know why? Because Unitas said, it's a part of the movie, BJ, at 300, he says, give them nothing, but take from them everything. And that's what he does. I ain't giving you nothing. I'm taking everything from you. So just watch him versus most guys, when they see Ronald Acuna Jr., they give me plan B. No, DeGrom, I'm coming right at him. He struck him out twice yesterday, right? Look, DeGrom is in a class all by himself. I mean, Kevin, he's doing something to where even if you don't root for his team, you root for him because of what he's doing. And dare I say, when he walks in the room, everybody waits till he sits down and say, all right, go ahead and do what y'all. Mr. DeGrom, have you a season, sir. This is one for the ages.
Yeah, I like BJ said earlier in the show, DeGrom could be pretty much average for the rest of the year, and he'll still win the Cy Young going away. It's like his numbers are going to be so ridiculous. Moving along, take 2. What will be the most important regular season game of the 2021 college football season? I'll let you do the most important however you want, but most important game.
Yeah, hear me out here, because I know a lot of people would immediately think, look, Georgia Clemson, and I get it. I think that might be the best, the biggest game of the regular season. But here's why first I didn't go with that one, because I know I've talked about the importance of that game, but I don't think it's an eliminator, right? So the loser of that game still has a chance to make the playoff. I think most specifically Georgia. If Georgia loses and they win out, they're going to be in the playoff. But even if Clemson loses and your only loss is to a top 5 Georgia team, you win the ACC, you beat a top 10, top 15 North Carolina or Miami in the ACC championship. And oh, by the way, you've been in it, 6 or 7 years in a row. I think they're probably still going to get in. For me, I think it's Notre Dame and Cincinnati on October 2nd. And Notre Dame has been one of the teams that has been in the college football playoff a couple of times. And keep in mind, it's a big deal when they get in because they take a slot from a Power 5 conference champion. Cincinnati has that potential. And I know some people may say, well, Cincinnati's not going to get in. I think momentum is moving in that direction. I think 7 or 8 years ago, before the playoff, of course, it was not realistic. I think a couple of years ago, even within the playoff format, it probably wasn't realistic. But we've seen programs like UCF and Cincinnati and others at least kind of push the conversation forward. And keep in mind that Cincinnati, I think, got as high as 6 or 7 last year, and they did not play a signature regular season game, and they didn't have the preseason hype they do now, right? Like, I think most of the preseason polls I've seen, and I don't have one in front of me right now, but most that I've seen have Cincinnati kind of in that 6 to 8 range. Well, if you start off the season 6 or 7 in the country and you play Notre Dame at Notre Dame, which I'm highlighting here, you also play at Indiana, and you win those games, but most specifically, you beat a top 15 Notre Dame in South Bend, I think you have a chance. And I think the impact of the winner possibly being a playoff team here is extra significant because we're still in the 4-team format, and neither of these teams are in Power 5 conferences. So to me, going off the way the question's asked, most important regular season game, because I think the loser here is obviously out, I will say Notre Dame, Cincinnati in South Bend on October 2nd.
I mean, BJ, for me, I think it's going to be Iowa State at Oklahoma, November 20th. I mean, everybody talking about Iowa State supposed to be the one to break up the usual suspects, right? And Oklahoma is one of those teams that's the usual suspects. I mean, Matt Campbell, the head coach of the Cyclones, he's had some relative success against Oklahoma. It's just not talked about. I think they beat them last year, if I'm not mistaken. But think about this: you got the makings of it. Brock Purdy, got your quarterback. You got a team that has some success against Oklahoma, and you got a coach in Matt Campbell who's not afraid of Lincoln Riley and them boys. To me, BJ, I think it is. You talk about eliminators games. Well, this is supposed to be the team. This is supposed to be the Iowa State team preseason. It's good enough to crack, to crack that, Final Four as far as like the last 4 teams standing. I was gonna go, Oregon, at Ohio State, but I just think that's too early in the season. For me, I think it is Iowa State and Oklahoma because I think it's next to the last game of the season, and I think it's Iowa State who's gonna have to go undefeated. They're not gonna be able to lose a game. If they can go undefeated and beat Oklahoma, I think they got a shot. So for me, give me Iowa State, Oklahoma, Nova City, and Cyclone will come and get them through.
I mean, I think the easy answer is Texas A&M, Alabama, and that's only because they play, I think, Alabama before they play LSU, right? I mean, it's Texas A&M, Alabama is Jimbo Fisher in a spot to upset the apple cart and give Alabama a loss that could potentially keep Alabama out of the SEC championship game and out of the 14 playoff. I think that one has the most implications potentially out there in 2021. Moving along, take 3. Was David Ross justified in immediately benching Javi Baez after he forgot how many outs the Cubs had and got thrown out while running off the field with 2 outs? Reports are Javi Baez like, it happens, not a big deal. David Ross said, no, it is a big deal. That's why we lose games, and benched him.
Well, I think, coaches have certain standards. Ben, you've told me about, some of the expectations you had during your career, and David Ross obviously played the game. And Kevin, I do think that this is a situation where it depends on kind of what the response was, or maybe it depends on, David Ross and kind of his individual standards. For me, when I think about mistakes like that, I think those happen sometimes in sports, and sometimes you'll hear, where somebody doesn't run out a hit or whatever, or an out, where you hit it to short or third, you get thrown out, and you kind of don't go full go, which maybe you understand it happening over the duration of 162 games, but a coach says, hey, we can't have that. I got to take you out. To me, I think, at least in theory, this could be something that just happens where you briefly forget and I come back on the field or I get reminded quickly. I think you were saying, Kevin, maybe a couple of days ago in the Braves game, like a good portion of the guys in the field had the outs wrong and started walking back, and then it was no, I gotta. So I mean, stuff like this happens over the duration of a season. But I think, look, a coach has expectations. A coach wants to see this, wants to see that, and I think what the coach says goes.
I mean, David Ross is extremely justified in benching Javier Baez. I mean, what else do you got to do? I mean, do Baez got something else to do? I mean, you got one thing to do, right? Watch the batter and know how many outs. I mean, think about this. Once again, BJ, it's easy to say these things when it's not your team. This is your team. This is the Braves.
Right, but let me ask you this real quick, and I don't know. Obviously, during my prestigious amateur career in 11 to 12-year-old soccer, I was always aware of everything. But did you in college or the pros ever get confused about what down it was? I mean, maybe not.
I never got confused what down it was, but that just goes along with the game. I mean, you got to understand the situation. That way you can anticipate stuff. I mean, and the thing is this. I mean, when you get listen, you forgot how many outs it is. All right, you forgot how many outs it is, and then you obviously get tagged out, and then the inning is over, and then you look at David Ross like, I mean, it happens. No, it shouldn't. You have nothing else to do. The main thing they used to always talk to us about in football is, the very first thing they say is focus. Then note it down a distance, anticipate the situation, then go out there and execute, then go out there and finish. That's every single play. If it is 3rd and 7 and I run a 5-yard route and I kneel down because I didn't know it was 7 yards, I'm gonna get bitched, I'm gonna get fined, and I deserve both. Because if you are watching the game, you thinking, didn't you know it was 2 outs? Two words. Donovan McNabb. He did not know you could tie in football, and he is your starting quarterback. He said, I didn't know you could tie.
Right. All I'm getting at is this is I think this happens kind of more than people realize. Like weren't we watching the NBA game the other night? And I don't remember who it was. Was it Lopez for the Bucks who got who got the ball? And literally it was a 2-point game or something, a 1-possession game with like 10 seconds left, and there was a shot clock violation.
Yeah.
Right. And the announcers are going, wait, did he not know how much time was on the shot clock because he kind of just had the ball and then passed it back out as the shot clock expired? I'm not saying it's right, and I'm not saying if you're a coach, you're not looking around going, what are you doing? I'm saying I think this happens a lot more than people think in sports.
Yeah, but they also won that game, right? So it's minimized. See, what is the end result of the game? BJ, now, if Milwaukee loses that game, they're going to be blaming him. We lost because of him. I'm just saying, when you go back to winning and losing games, it is so small as to why you won or lost. You can't even really tell the difference. If I got a baseball player, I don't care. Well, I'm going to go to Kevin. Kevin's little leaguer. Coach, I didn't know it was 2 outs. You don't got to know about it because you ain't running your behind back out there. That's ridiculous. That's all you have nothing else to do. How many outs is there in baseball when the inning's over? It's 3. How many do we have? I don't know. You don't know? Don't get caught watching the game. Don't get caught watching the game. Keep your head in the game.
It's a minimal thing to pay attention, right? At the end of the day. That's Take 3. Do it every day. This time we'll come back. Rich Styles, we're talking Jon Rahm's big win in the U.S. Open. Next, it's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It's 3 and Out on this Tuesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, our next guest, joins us every Tuesday. We got a major championship to talk about with him. Rich Stiles, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show, joins us. Rich, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm just drinking a little bit of Spanish wine.
Yeah, it goes well for Jon Rahm with the major victory. And Rich, speak to that. I mean, you talk about guys who have been on journeys in the sports realm. I mean, this is a guy that was winning and winning big a couple of weeks ago. The PGA Tour meets him on the 18th green on a Saturday and says, hey, man, you got a positive COVID test. You have to be out.
Yep.
Then he clears the COVID protocols, goes into the U.S. Open, and plays one of the more magnificent, I mean, you could say back nine if you want to, more magnificent last 3 or 4 holes that we've seen. The putt he made on 17, incredible, to win the major championship. Describe that ride that Jon Rahm has been on to ultimately come back and win the major championship.
Well, just consider the fact that he had to quit after leading by 6 strokes at Memorial. So that's a pretty low point. And got a phone call apparently sometime over the next few days from Patrick Harrington, who explained a story to Jon Rahm about a time that he signed the wrong scorecard and got sued from a major championship. And he said, how you bounce back is going to be the key to what you are as a man, as a father. And this guy not only bounced back, he really had something to prove. He said, I'm a big believer in karma. And boy, did he ever. He just played magnificently, made 2 great putts, came back and won the first Spaniard to win a U.S. Open. I mean, his maturity in the last 2 weeks really showed who Jon Rahm could be and maybe is going to be throughout his career.
And Rich, talk about, as Kevin mentioned, Rahm Sunday, where you have just some incredible putts late. You have a final round Sunday score of 67, and to finish the way he did, how impressive was that?
It was very impressive. I mean, those last 2 holes with both of those putts, neither one of them was easy, and they both broke quite a bit. And he just hit the center of the cup. I mean, he has had a reputation for having a temper. And we've seen it on TV. We've seen it in some of the tournaments. But over the last 2 weeks, I think coming in, playing a golf tournament, knowing that it's going to end on Father's Day, him being a father for the first time, his dad being at the tournament who flew in from Spain. I mean, I just think he reacted very maturely, very professionally, and proving that he could bounce back, that karma was there. And, Torrey Pines has been great to Jon Rahm. I mean, that's where he had his first professional win a few years ago. It's where he proposed to his wife, Kelly, as they were on a hike. So Torrey Pines has special meaning to Jon Rahm, like many courses do to several professionals that are out there. But I just have the utmost respect for the way that he played and moved himself into the number 1 spot in the world with the win over Brooks Koepka.
And, Rich, when you think about everything that was going on, in golf, I mean, you talk about Bryce and obviously Brooks' situation and everybody trying to, surround themselves around there. A guy like, Rahm, and, bigger than just it being such a feel-good story. I mean, with everything that went on in that weekend, for him to get his win, with everything he had to deal with in the weeks previous, it's got to be not just great for him, but great for golf as well.
Oh, definitely. I mean, Jon Rahm, just as I said, had something to prove, and he did. I mean, first major win for a Spaniard, first major as a dad on Father's Day, especially after coming back with what happened at Memorial. And, Bryson, he just has a lot of drama around him and a lot of conversations and a lot of media, and he goes into the back nine and basically collapse. And he blamed it on bad luck rather than bad shots. But bottom line is he hit the shots. There was not a lot of luck involved. Colin Montgomery, a lot of people had picked. I mean, he bladed irons over the green, just couldn't judge what was going on. Led to double bogeys. Rory had a bunker shot, which led to a double bogey. And Louis Oosthuizen finished second again. 6th career runner-up in a major since he won the Open in 2010. But just an incredible tournament, and what a finish! What a dramatic finish! Kind of like Sevi and Sergio for John Rahm to finish the way he did.
Yeah, certainly. And Rich, you look at the way it round up Harris English, Southeast Georgia guy, former Georgia golfer, finishes third. I know he was up at the top of the leaderboard for a bit on Sunday, but was in the clubhouse hoping guys would fall back to him by a shot or so. It just didn't happen for him, but a great weekend to follow up how well he played the week prior.
Harris has been playing great. I mean, his confidence is at an all-time high, and it shows in the way that he's playing. When we talked, prior to going to a couple tournaments, his confidence was up, played well. He's had some big finishes. This is a third-place finish. It's his highest finish at a major, and a third-place finish all alone with -3. I mean, he played well. He just kind of snuck up the leaderboard on the weekend. I don't think a lot of people thought he was going to even be in the hunt, and all of a sudden, here is Harris at -3, shoots a 68, and ends up finishing third all by himself. Just a great weekend for him.
Here of the Back Nine Boys. Rich, before we let you go, I understand that, again, we can't do one of these without a little controversy. So Christian's saying he won wire to wire, but you actually picked the guy that actually won the thing in the U.S. Open in Jon Rahm. So where do you stand on this?
It's done. Over. I mean, if he would have picked a winner, it would have been over. I mean, I don't care if he picked 3 guys that all shot under par. It doesn't matter. If you pick the winner, -6. His guys weren't -6. So pick the winner. It's over. It's done.
He wins in the aggregate, according to him. You win just because you won. That's the way I see it.
I won just because I won.
Well, you got the guy with the lowest score, right? That's that's how you win.
Exactly right.
That's the point. So I will pass along your grievances to Christian, where he is trying to apparently backdoor another W in our contest, and we're not going to stand for it, Rich. If you win straight up, that's what's going to happen.
Probably not there today, and we know why he's not there. He can't.
Rich, always a pleasure. Thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Rich Stiles, host of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show and winner of our U.S. Open Golf Challenge here on the show. Yes, he actually picked Jon Rahm. I forgot about that because Christian came in. It's like, I won. I was like, did I think you picked Jon Rahm? Because I was going to pick Jon Rahm and I was last, so I didn't get to. But apparently Rich did, and Christian just wins in the aggregate. How do we feel about this where it's like, he collectively, I guess, won, but Rich, out of 140 guys, actually picked the guy that won?
I will hope that our relative golf expert would have the best insight on who had the best chance to get out there and get it done. But hey, appreciate you though, Christian, for trying to get that dub, even though you ain't get that. Kim was like, I don't think you picked wrong, but I'm gonna act like you did. No.
Hey, yeah, there we go. We got more to come. Dan Murphy going to join us when we come back. Covered the Supreme Court ruling yesterday as it pertains to college athletes. We'll get the very latest from him next. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. And we are here after a huge day in college football yesterday, or just college athletics, I should say, yesterday with the Supreme Court decision on academic-related benefits. Unanimous decision there by the Supreme Court. Our next guest wrote a great piece explaining just what happened yesterday in the world of college athletics. Dan Murphy, ESPN.com, joins us here on 3 and Out. Dan, welcome to the show again. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
I guess, obviously, Supreme Court decisions sometimes can get a little murky. I guess just to start with, kind of give us the Cliff Notes overview of what exactly they said yesterday in their unanimous decision.
Yeah, so there are a lot of different moving pieces, and they're all sort of related to each other going on with college sports changing right now. But what happened yesterday was, in the short term, the Supreme Court said that college athletes are allowed to get a little bit more from their schools as long as that stuff is related to their education. So schools can now give their athletes an unlimited amount of like school supplies, laptops, lab equipment, that kind of stuff. They can help pay for them to go study abroad somewhere if they want. They can pay to fund internships that an athlete has during the off season if they want to do that. But probably more importantly, in the bigger long-term impact of this, is that the argument that the NCAA has been using for the last 35 or 40 years now to say that it's different than every other industry in the country, that it can place limits and restrictions on what any school can offer to its prospective athletes, has been sort of shot down by the Supreme Court in their decision yesterday. And so while it's a small step right now for athletes, it could lead to a major, major change.
Did we lose Dan there for a second? I think we may have lost Dan there for just a little bit. We may have lost Dan Murphy. Here we go. I believe we have Dan. Dan, you back with us?
I am. Sorry about that. Yeah.
That's okay. Kind of continue along what you were saying. You were talking about a small change initially, but potentially has larger ramifications down the road.
Yeah. So, I mean, the bigger impact could be, right, if in future lawsuits, and there are already other lawsuits lined up against the NCAA related to antitrust law, which prevents most industries from placing universal limits on what, schools could give to players or employers could give to employees. That's going to be a much harder challenge to fend off for the NCAA in the future, and it could lead to eventually, and again, this is years from now if it ever happens, right? But it could lead to any restriction at all, including schools directly paying players, being deemed illegal by the court system in the future.
So is the NCAA, I guess, business model as we've come to know it over the years, is that, whether it's in the near future or down the road, is that now inevitably subject to change?
I don't, change, yes, probably. Is it inevitably doomed? I think, as some people have put it here in the past 24 hours. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think over the past 10 or 15 years, we've seen the definition of amateurism be chipped away at on a whole bunch of different fronts, mostly through the legal system and through new state laws and national laws. And I think that yesterday's decision was another big chip and a significant one, in that it could set up the NCAA for a potential knockout blow down the road. But yeah, I do think you'll see, because of this, a lot of powerful people in college sports realize that the court system isn't going to be there to defend them, and they might need to be a little bit more proactive in making their own rules to make sure that they can stand up to legal challenges in the future.
And then, I mean, obviously, with what the Supreme Court just ruled, I mean, it's a big time decision that's going to affect all of college athletics. But how much of this does the NCAA they didn't know what was going to be said, but they kind of had to have a feeling that, these type of situations was going to come to the forefront at some point, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the people who are most scratching their head right now about the NCAA strategy have been saying to me, this has been something that that you could have seen coming 10 years ago, and then the NCAA dragged its feet on it, and that's why they're in the pickle that they're in now, where so many things are hitting the fan all at the same time for them. And yeah, I mean, even appealing this case, right? The NCAA is the group that asked the Supreme Court to weigh in on this case. Was an interesting decision in retrospect, because it's probably done much more harm than good for the NCAA by asking the Supreme Court. This is the first time in 35 years that the Supreme Court, the highest court in the country, has weighed in and given its opinion on the NCAA's business model. And it was not the answer the NCAA was hoping for.
Dan Murphy, ESPN.com, joining us here on 3 and Out. And Dan, you mentioned the Supreme Court basically saying, as you said, that schools could give an unlimited amount of educational related material. I mean, does that word unlimited kind of bring pause to anybody that, obviously when you're talking about athletics, does that increase the divide between kind of the haves and have nots? If you can literally one up the next guy on whatever they're choosing to offer their collegiate athletes, at some point, obviously smaller schools aren't going to be able to keep up with that.
Yeah, potentially it does. I mean, there are certain things, right? We're talking about paying for every athlete to go spend 6 weeks in Europe in the summer studying and going to, enrich themselves educationally over there. I don't think every school in the country can afford to do that kind of thing. One of the other things that's involved that was specifically talked about was paying athletes up to nearly $6,000 based on, we can get far into the weeds on how they landed at that number, but paying athletes direct cash payments for getting good grades or reaching other academic benchmarks, which is a pretty significant shift, that they can actually make some real money for just showing up to class in some cases.
When you look at this, and I understand, it's still evolving and there are more questions than answers still, but it's the starting point for at least conceptualizing a model where there is more of a consistent stipend, or I guess a payment, quote unquote, in some capacity moving forward, in whatever capacity that comes?
So I don't know that consistent is the word I would use. I think it opens up the door for a lot more possibilities, and potentially, I think more than anything else, what we're going to see moving forward with name, image, and likeness, and potentially even more after that, is that certain athletes will get more than others. And just like in every other business, right, where some employees make more than others, that opportunity is now going to be there for a lot of college athletes, when in the past there has been a hard ceiling on what most athletes are able to get. And because of that, a lot of people got the same stuff. That may not be the case anymore moving forward.
And then when I think about the NCAA, obviously the model that they had has superseded expectations. When you talk about how much revenue is being generated through athletics at this point with TV deals and, conferences having their own, networks and things of this nature, how much is the NCAA going to look back on these things and say, we had our opportunity and our chance to get out ahead of this thing? Doesn't mean we're going to stop it, but we could have got ahead of it. Now we kind of got to go with whatever is mandated at this point.
I think I've talked to athletic directors and other people who are already saying that are saying, we had an opportunity 10 years ago, 15 years ago to give a little bit, right, so that we wouldn't have been forced to this point by the court system and by members of Congress and by other state lawmakers, where they had an opportunity to sort of drive the bus and be proactive with some of those changes and make it look like they were at least sort of trying to accommodate athletes, as it became clear that more and more and more money was being generated by this system. But because they weren't proactive about it, they're now at the mercy of others who are making those decisions. They don't get to shape those rules nearly as much as they may have been able to had they been a little bit more forward thinking about it.
Dan Murphy, ESPN, joining us here on 3 and Out. Dan, with this decision, with name, image, likeness coming into effect, in some cases, as in our state next week, do you believe these things will work as they are intended to, or do you have concerns that it could get unfettered on some levels in terms of what people are able to offer, what people are able to do within the guidelines of the rules here?
Yeah, well, the tricky part is a lot of the rules are hard to define right now. Talking to athletic departments and even college athletes themselves, everybody seems to be proceeding with a little bit of caution right now, because it's not clear unless you have a state law, right? So there's a half a dozen states or so that are going to have laws where it's a little bit more clearly spelled out. But in most states and most schools across the country, the NCAA hasn't yet sort of laid out exactly what athletes are going to be able to do and not able to do. So there's a lot of confusion right now, and undoubtedly, right, there are going to be some instances where people, wherever the NCAA is going to draw a line, there are people that are going to walk right up to that line and some people that are going to step over it, right? No matter where, as long as there's a restriction, there's going to be somebody who tries to stretch the limits of that restriction. So there's no doubt that there's going to be some issues that pop up from this. There's no doubt that there are going to be unscrupulous people out there that are going to try to take advantage of athletes and make a buck off of them and not have their best interests in mind. There will be issues. There's been a lot of work done to this point to try to prepare for those things and fend off as many as possible, but it's not going to be perfect. It is going to be a little bit chaotic as this rolls out.
Dan, I want to ask you a question that I'm hearing a lot and I hear people ask, and that is, how much different is college athletics going to look, or will it be substantially different 5, 10, 15 years down the line?
Yeah, in that time frame, I think that's fair to say, right? This coming football season this year, I don't think you're going to see a whole lot different. The games are still going to be played. We're still going to see generally the same kind of stuff going on. But I think there's so much turmoil and so much change right now that I do think that things may come to a head in a way that forces the NCAA or college sports in general, if the NCAA doesn't exist anymore, to change in some significant way, right? And to me, that looks like for a long time, colleges have said, have kept one foot in two lanes, right? And on one hand, they say we are an educational-based, group that's here to try to give opportunities for students to learn and play a sport while they do it. And on the other hand, they're also raking in hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars on a regular basis. And they've been able to straddle those two lanes. I don't see how 5-10 years down the road, you can still be in both of those lanes. I think we're going to get to a point where they're going to have to choose to say we're either part of an entertainment industry that happens to be attached to a university, or we're going to walk things way back and try to do things more like the Ivy League or a D3 school does.
And then how much, even sticking with that, how much is what the Supreme Court saying is making sure that these colleges and universities are actually living up to these taglines when they coming into these young people's living rooms, telling them you get the best of both worlds, right? That's always a tagline. You get the best of both academically and athletically. Now, naming image likeness is one thing, but now are they forcing these colleges and universities to live up to these ideals? Because you can't say one thing to get me on campus and then forget all about those conversations once I'm actually on campus.
Yeah, I that's a great point, right? I think for a long time the NCAA has held this message of, hey, we're really not about making money. We're about, creating opportunities for student athletes. And look, that's not totally BS, right? In some cases, they do change people's lives. They do create opportunities for people that wouldn't otherwise have them. But they also make a whole lot of money while doing it. And I think in the past year or two, we've seen them reach out to a bunch of groups, the Supreme Court among them, Congress, another one, to try to share those same messages that they used for so long. And what we've seen is the court system and politicians have said, yeah, that's not going to fly anymore. You guys are too big and make too much money for us to buy into that. You're going to have to change because that's not reality.
Dan Murphy, ESPN.com, our guest here on 3 and Out. And Dan, I know we've talked a lot about Supreme Court decision, name, image, likeness. You've got a story out today about Jake Olson. A lot of folks may remember his story. Played at Southern Cal, was a blind long snapper on the football team, and now is part of a company that's going to assist athletes with name, image, likeness. Is that right?
Yeah, Jake is this incredible kid, right, who lost his eyesight to cancer when he was a young man and went on anyway to become a long snapper and played for USC while he was out there, got into a few games and snapped in them. And while he was a student, he had the very rare opportunity, because of his medical situation and because he was already sort of being paid to be an inspirational speaker when he showed up at USC, that he was able to make money while he was in college. He was granted a special waiver by the NCAA to do that. So he's one of like a handful of people that has ever had to balance playing a sport, going to class, and sort of running their own business and making money themselves all at the same time. And so he's now using that experience as one of many, many companies that's out there right now that's aimed at trying to help athletes navigate all this and make the process a little bit more simple and efficient so that athletes, college athletes, can find ways to make some money off of these new rules that are opening up with name, image, and likeness, while also not needing a full-time staff to be able to handle all of that.
And then, I mean, how much is the NCAA going to benefit from having more guys, like this, being able on the side of the play, having former players help navigate these lives of these current players? Because the one thing I know that the NCAA, if they're not already doing it, they're going to end up saying, "Oh, we always knew we were going to end up doing right by the players. I mean, we always knew it was going to come to this. It just, it just took a lot more time than it could." Because in my mind, the NCAA is not going to let the Supreme Court or name and image like this make them go away.
Yeah, I think a lot of, forward-thinking schools and almost any big-time school in the country right now, an athletic department, has thought through, hey, we need, a couple things, right? First, we need to make sure that we're doing this in a way we're going to be following whatever rules exist. We need to do this in a way that is going to be a good recruiting tool for us to be able to go to a prospective athlete when they're in high school and say, hey, the guys who come play for us have great opportunities, do a great job of branding themselves and marketing themselves and finding these ways to make money. And so they're hiring people to help them with that. And then also they're just hiring to help organize all of this and keep track of all of it, which is going to be a huge task in itself. So I think the schools that are thinking through this, and that's a lot of them at this point, have hired companies or have hired consultants to try to help them navigate all this stuff so that players don't get themselves into too tight of a spot moving forward.
Dan Murphy, ESPN.com, our guest here on 3 and Out. Dan, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, guys.
And again, check out his piece there, ESPN.com, and this story yesterday about the Supreme Court decision. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you were with us here on this Tuesday. A lot to get to. Big day in college football as the playoff proposal goes to the College Football Managing Committee to kind of approve forward. BJ, I know you are excited about that in all of its iterations. I mean, that's I couldn't have said it better myself, Ben, with what BJ had to say there about the college football playoff.
I'm telling you, I mean, what else can be said, Kevin? When you look at the fact that the way BJ broke it down, it's almost like he didn't say nothing at all.
It really was so crisp, so clean. BJ, anything else to add? I mean, dude is on fire today as we come ready for the final hour of the show. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Great to be here on this Tuesday, final hour of the show. So much to get to. And again, we appreciate Dan Murphy joining us last hour talking about the Supreme Court decision from yesterday. Also, Rich Stiles talking about Jon Rahm and his U.S. Open victory from over the weekend. So much to get to. College football has been dominating. Seemingly, BJ and Ben, I know we talk about, look, the NFL likes to rule the offseason, right? With all the who's going where. The last few days, it's the NBA playoffs, and more so than that, the ever-changing landscape of college athletics, where literally in about a week and 2 days, name, image, likeness will be good to go in Georgia. You have the Supreme Court weighing in on unlimited academic benefits to college athletes potentially going into effect. That's unprecedented. And now today, you have the college football playoff subgroup, presenting the board of managers with their 12-team playoff proposal, which then has to go through approval process and so on and so forth. But the ACC putting out a statement today saying the ACC appreciates the work of the subgroup of the College Football Management Committee as we continue the evaluation of future postseason formats. Today's presentation to the full board of managers was an important step in the process, and now we move into the listening and feedback stage. As a league, we look forward to continued conversations surrounding what's best for postseason college football, and more importantly, the student athletes that participate. It's undeniable how successful the college football playoff has been since its formation, and it's important we ensure any future evolutions will only enhance the college football regular season and postseason. That wasn't a we hate it. It's probably a more how much money are we going to make off this deal potentially at the BJ. Seriously, that was a nice statement to be put out, but it's like we're now in the listening and feedback stage. Well, what kind of listening and feedback do you think they're wanting to hear? Well, we're going to make more money at the end of the day.
Yeah, I hear you. And it's fascinating to follow all this because you're right. There are multiple layers, multiple angles, multiple sort of evolutions of amateurism in college athletics. And it's almost surreal. I told you a couple of days ago, last week on the show, that the college football playoff expanding to 12 teams potentially was something that was almost hard to believe. It felt make-believe, right? Because back in 2013, even as recent as 2013, we had a two-team system. Auburn and Florida State played in the BCS National Championship in 2013, technically, I guess, in January of 2014. And then you're talking about this groundbreaking, innovative, revolutionary 4-team playoff. And just as we're kind of getting comfortable with the idea of it, right? Like there's still nebulous and abstract angles to the 4-team playoff. What does 4 best mean? Is it 4 most deserving? How do we compare resumes? Ben, you mentioned it last week. How do Baylor and TCU go from in to out when they don't play a game? It's like we still have more questions than answers with the 4-team playoff. And now we're going to implement potentially in as soon as a couple of years, a 12-team playoff. It doesn't seem real. And there's so much going on in college athletics that now that, which doesn't even feel like it's actually happening, is the second or third biggest story. And it's no longer even at the forefront of the news cycle with the name, image, likeness, Kevin, like you said, literally 7-8 days away in some states, the Supreme Court ruling and not only what that means, but what that could mean. College athletics is rapidly changing, and a lot of it is happening in a couple of weeks span here, which is really interesting and almost kind of hard to stay with. And in terms of the playoff, this thing's inevitable now, right? I know they're talking about we still have to get this and that and get it considered and get it approved. This is happening, right? Is there any doubt that in a couple of years we're not dealing with a 12-team playoff?
Oh yeah, it's definitely happening. I think the thing about the NCAA that I'll never ever understand is when you decide to implement inclusivity. It's all inclusive. We want to make sure everybody has full transparency. You never done that, and I think it's great that they are going to reach out to all the players and the coaches to get their take on it. Well, it goes back to what Kevin said. Everybody's getting a check in a sense. P5s are getting a check now. Everybody's going to get in. You got that 6 automatic qualified. Then you got the 6 best teams, regardless of conference. BJ, which is something you like. But BJ, we always talk about this. Watch how these rankings do now that 12 can get it. See, now it's, man, we were number 13. What did y'all do? We went undefeated. Beat BYU, beat Notre Dame, all lost by one. You know, I just think that number one, you know, now, you know, more TV deals, more accessibility, more visibility, more, you know, opportunity for people to be seen. But once again, I know people are going to be talking about the fact that, college football, college athletics is changing. It is. But the NCAA is still going to be out front of this stuff. I'm telling y'all, it's not going to. We know. Every time we say, oh, man, this is how it's going to be. This is going to be great for. What's going to make it worse is, what if the best conference now, Kevin and BJ, is the Sun Belt, right? They're the best conference in college football. Sun Belt champion got in, nobody else. I'm just saying, BJ, you know how you look within something, you're going to say,
I think you're a long ways away from that happening, though. I mean,
I'm just going to say this. I'm all about making sure that everybody gets an invite or everybody understands that a party is going on. Like, you know, because, you know, when you think about how this thing is going to end up, I don't know how it's going to end up. I mean, I don't like talking about the NCAA in a complimentary manner because that's not real. NCAA complimentary, all this is being forced, and with name and image like this Supreme Court stuff going on, this is forced, and that's fine. That's fine. But I just think that when you start talking about a 12 team, I think it's going to be great. I think all these things happen at one time. Kevin and BJ is great, but just like when it comes to things like, you know, who's going to get in, I want to see it on paper. We all, everybody on this show is from Georgia. Yeah, but we grew up in Missouri, though, at a certain point. We from the show me. You got to show me because it looks good, sounds good.
No, but let me ask you this. Because I think you make an interesting point about maybe even as it expands, there are some who kind of want it to stay the same in terms of, you know, what ultimately happens and how's it going to look in a couple of years. I asked this last week, and I asked this because I really want people to think about it. Because I think all of us, and the three of us, I don't want to speak for you guys, but we all want there to be college football playoff expansion. We all want there to be more access. And Kevin, I know you've been arguing for the conference champions for years. My question is, and I'm not necessarily asking just you guys, but everybody, because Ben, to your point of what is this going to look like? Okay, everybody's celebrating this, more money, more this and that, and I think it's great. And I would have no problem at all with this scenario. But will the powers that run college football be excited, be happy, feel like they made the right decision if in 2023 Cincinnati wins the tournament, and then in 2024 Coastal Carolina wins the tournament, and maybe Alabama wins it in 2025, but then Memphis wins it in 2026? Like, in college basketball, we don't blink an eye when a Gonzaga or, you know, a program that's not in a, quote, Power 5 conference wins a national championship. And I know you're not talking about a 68-team playoff, but if the first 3 or 4 or 5 years have a couple of non-traditional powers win the national championship, and Kevin, I know, and hold on, because I know you've long speculated, hey, if that happens, it'll kind of self-correct it, right? Then that conference will be a bigger deal. But will people be happy if that happens?
I think over time they would, but I mean, to think that in 2 years a mid-major is going to win 3 straight games against the top 15 to win a championship,
I think it's very possible.
I don't think that's happening. And again, I could be wrong. Could they win a game? Sure. Could they win 2 games? Maybe. I just don't think right now a team like, say, Memphis could go 3 straight weekends playing the top 15 and win against. And again, I'm not saying they can't do any of it. I just don't think 3 in a row against that. I mean, because 3 in a row against that type of competition is hard for anybody. Alabama to win 3 in a row against top 15 is going to be tough to just chalk it up. So I do think you will see more of that. I think as the tournament settles in, people will just say, look, there's a team like Cincinnati that's in there. And I think what gives you, kind of credibility, you got to win. Now, if the first couple of times a G5 school gets in there, they get matched up and they lose 47-3, everybody's going to say, see, told you we shouldn't have done that. I think it's going to take competition, and it's going to take a win here or there to kind of say, look, okay, maybe they can't win the national championship right now, but they certainly can win a game. Okay, maybe they can't win the national championship right now, but they can certainly win 2 games. All right, maybe they can. I think that's kind of the evolutionary process. I would like when Boise State first came on the scene, everybody said, "Oh, it's Boise State." Then they played Oklahoma tooth and nail and beat them in a BCS bowl game. And all of a sudden, Boise State was legit. They're playing Georgia in season openers. They're going over here to go. I think it just takes some of that over time. Do I think in 2 years we're going to see them go to the championship? No. Don't think that's going to happen. Do I think they could win a game? Sure. But I kind of lean more towards Ben because I think as you step back, big picture, and we all assume it's going to be 12, it seems to be heading in that direction. I think college football has taken, or college athletics has taken a big step forward and 2 steps right back to where they were. Why? Okay, you've allowed for more access. And then in the same instance, we're about to have unfettered, potentially name, image, likeness going on, which obviously caters to, at this point in the early stages, teams with bigger athletes. You want to go there. Why? Because you're on TV more. You're on more prominent games. People know who you are. I know you can say Instagram and Twitter and all that could get you. I agree. And then you couple that with what the Supreme Court just said, and now in the name of academic extras, it's unlimited. Well, I mean, if I'm Alabama, I can come up with a whole lot of ways to just walk up to you and go, they're going to give you what? All right, we'll give you that and this. Are they going to get, oh, they said 2? We'll give you that and this. And I think you're seeing the powers that be when it comes to recruiting athletes. Now name, image, likeness becomes something that, well, you could do that anywhere, but let's talk about the extras you get when you come here. We're going to give you a monitor. Now that monitor happens to be 70 inches, but my God, you have to be able to log on and read all the papers you're typing. I mean, I think there's a number of things, and not to mention, as Dan said, you could get into scenarios down the road where literally it could be as simple as, hey, football guys, if you get a 3-0, you get $2,700 or $3,000. Or if you just go to class, we'll get, as he said in that series, if you just go to class, we'll give you $5,000 or whatever that number is going to be. Those are big time advantages for the already haves that I don't think a lot of schools can really compete with. So I think you took a step forward and 2 steps back all at the same time. Yes.
And BJ, just think about this too. I mean, just look at college football, not from a standpoint of you being a college football expert, but just from the outside looking in. If you're just a casual onlooker of college football, you don't know about the Cincinnatis and you don't know about these teams. But if they're in a tournament, they've won. Now, if they win it all, which I don't think is going to happen, they still won because you one of the last 12 teams. That is your recruiting. We were one of the 12 teams standing. Now, when you start talking about it, there is college football can ill afford for them to win. See, it's like the NCAA tournament. When the last time a Cinderella won? Great stories, but when the last time they won? And I think what happens is when you start talking about college football, I mean, the gap between the have-not, it's have-nots in these conferences with these big-time teams. You think when you start talking about going outside, I mean, Cincinnati's and the Georgia Southerns and the App States and the Louisianas of the world, they are very, 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 very slim, few and far between. I just think that I do agree. When you talk about the NCAA, it's so much that go on behind the scenes. It's almost like the NCAA has its own college football playoff committee, and we don't know what they're discussing. We can kind of see when they start implementing it. They're going to get out in front of this. They're going to make sure they come out looking good. They're going to make it seem like, I'm sorry, no, Mark Emmert just went to these things because he knew he wanted to be respectful. Mark Emmert don't know what the hell going on, but they're not going to say that. So for me, I like what's being said, but until it is being implemented, I don't believe none of it.
Well, no, I mean, I understand what you're saying. Going back to the college football playoff argument, and just to be clear, do I think that Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Oklahoma will be the favorites? Yes. Do I think they will win most of the time, if not the vast majority of the time? Yes. But do I think, for example, if you go back a couple of years, that 2017 Central Florida could have won a national championship? Absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, they have a recognized national championship. I see you shaking your head, but hold on. because everybody says, oh man, there's no way they could do it. Well, keep in mind that year, their last game, they beat Auburn in a game they controlled for a good portion of the game in the Sugar Bowl. That Auburn team beat Alabama the game before that. And I know the transitive property doesn't work that way in sports, but when I look at 2017 Central Florida, for example, they played nationally ranked Memphis and beat them by 30. They played nationally ranked South Florida and put up 50. They played nationally ranked Memphis again and put up 60. They beat Auburn the game after Auburn beat Alabama by double figures. Hold on. Would I pick entering that tournament, that Central Florida team to win the national championship? No. Do I think they could? Yes. And what I'm asking is to your point, Ben, people want, more of the same, is if theoretically, for sake of argument, that Central Florida team wins a national championship, will everybody who loves the playoff still love it if UCF wins that title?
Yeah, they'll still love it. No, yes, they're gonna still love it, because at the end of the day, I mean, BJ, that's what. Do we really care who wins? Do we really care who wins? The NBA Finals? No, we just want to see. We just want to see a good matchup. I think if UCF would have won, they won it. We're gonna say, hey, they went through the gauntlet and they won it. But this is the thing: UCF can't do what they did and just fall off a cliff. Like, ain't nobody talking about them. That's not their fault. Certain teams, they don't got to be good every year to be relevant. Teams like UCF, they got to be good every year, and they got to play teams that the world knows and recognize nationally to be relevant. That's all I'm saying. I'm like you, BJ. Look, football is football. Cincinnati shows you. I don't want to hear certain guys in Georgia, but don't care. They scratch the claw. They got a kicker that can kick it 50-some yards. I'm just saying, teams that are not nationally relevant have to play at a supreme level every year just to get noticed. I'm just saying, I like what they're doing, but if it comes down to a 12-1 Cincinnati and a 9-3 Auburn, they're gonna stick Auburn in there. They ain't gonna recognize that one loss compared to it. We ain't comparing apples to apples. And people, and that's what people need to know. We know who UCF is. The world does not, and that's going to have a lot to do with them last 6 teams, not the first 6 teams to get in.
Well, again, a long way to go, but the presentation made today, largely expected to go through that approval process to get us to 12 teams come 2023. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We're streaming live at ESPNCoastal.com. Good to have you back. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. You look at what we talked about with Dan Murphy in hour number 2 yesterday. Just so much happening in college athletics with name, image, likeness. We talked about the 12-team playoff that went through some of the early presentation processes today. Obviously, it moves on for approval, which it's largely expected to get. And then you have that Supreme Court decision yesterday, which BJ really propels a lot of things forward in college athletics. We talked about that with Dan Murphy. He's like, look, there's a lot of unknowns with this thing. How big could it get? How far reaching does it go? And when you open up the doors to say you can offer academic based benefits, well, how does that change the name of the game when it comes to college athletics as well? I think there's so many unknowns with what's happening around college athletics. I mean, within the last 6 months, you're literally seeing a complete transformation right before your eyes. Usually it happens gradually. Really, in the last 6 months, you're talking about tripling the playoffs, students who, I mean, we've seen in this state. Was it Todd Gurley had to sit out 4 games for selling his jersey? Georgia Tech had to give back an ACC championship for
Right.
$100 worth of clothes. And now that's like, doesn't even matter in a week, right? Hey, they gave me clothes. We have a deal. It's fine. Like, it's crazy. And then you have the Supreme Court decision, which says, look, you can give unlimited benefits to your athletes. And I know we always look through the prism of football, but give unlimited benefits to your athletes, academic-based laptops, computers, money to go to class, potentially, things of that nature. I mean, to me, this is completely reshaping the entire collegiate structure almost in the grand time scale of things, almost overnight here.
You know what it sounds like when you hearing all these different. Well, first and foremost, I mean, amateurism has been out the window, not just because everything that's coming out right now, but think about what you just said, Kevin. Unlimited benefits for academics, right? Unlimited. Then you start talking about name and image likeness. You start talking about the fact that you can benefit off that. So all they're really doing is saying, well, this is what college already does to them. This is what they're benefiting off your name and image likeness. Check. When you start talking about benefits and things of this nature, what really bothers me is this players who lost eligibility, who lost playing time. They shouldn't have lost that back then. They tried. This right here is showing how ridiculous that was back then. I have to give back an ACC championship game. Now, yeah, I'm selling jerseys because I'm trying to, boost my image. No, I am broke. That's why I'm selling the jersey. How do I know? Listen, we go to an Outback Bowl. They give you rings. Win or lose, they give them to you. I walk up in the pawn shop to pawn mine. I ain't pawn it. He goes, oh, I got a bunch of those over there. What? Oh, yeah, your teammates already been up in here. What? Names on the side, everything. But it's not because we don't appreciate the Outback Bowl. It's not because we don't appreciate the opportunity. It's the fact that the car that my coach drives is sponsored. The cell phones that my coaches use are sponsored. They wear the same Florida gear that we wear, and they still get paid. I get to go to class. The training table that we go to, they go to. All I'm saying is a lot of this stuff has been nonsense. When I was at college, they didn't have no SEC network. When I was at college, they didn't have no ACC network. That's how far this, and that's just right now. Could you imagine, Kevin and BJ, 10 years from now, where college athletics, it's not slowing down just because some restrictions got thrown in. Somebody's saying, hey, man, what else can we get? And you're right. I will say this. Kevin said something that I will agree with. It is half the college, but the other half is you. Don't think that the University of Florida right now don't love the fact that Tim Tebow is 45 minutes down the road. They're gonna use him even when he's gone. I'm just saying, when you start talking about being able to benefit these players, this is what's really happening. The people ain't talking about. I was in the National Football League. I went through the NFL concussion protocol. People say, man, they gave $1 billion to the lawsuit. They did that to not tell us about what they know. To keep from knowing what they know, I would throw money at it. That's what's happening now. they say, hey, you better give them something, because if we have to open this thing up and really show what we're doing, it's going to get even rougher. Because, BJ, you talk about Supreme Court justices. They probably ain't playing no athletics, probably rooted for a team. And whenever you get an outside entity to dictate what you do infrastructure-wise, it is going to jack it up, because they just looking at the numbers, and they looking at how, all right, man, how much do the workers get? They're not workers, they're college athletes. Wait, college athletes did this? Yeah. What? So I'm just saying, I do think it is a step in the right direction, but I also understand the fact that they rather give them something to really show what they're really doing. Exploitation is laughable in this sense. And I will say this too. You know what this really does? If they're doing this for student athletes, what about the students on campus that's being exploited by these, colleges? Because there's a lot of stuff going on. Exploitation ain't just happening with student athletes. If you go to medical school, I got friends who are doctors, and Ben, I did more research for cancer research. What kind of doctor? I'm a baby doctor. I'm doing research for something that I'm not even involved in to get hours. That's what it's really going to do, BJ, because don't just think the student athletes going to benefit. The students who are getting exploited, they should benefit as well.
Well, and as we move forward with this, I think it's important to at least try to have a perspective of how you can benefit college athletics at large. I think that's going to be important. But to go back to what we asked Dan Murphy and Kevin Ben, I mean, I think it's impossible to have all the answers. What is college athletics going to look like, much less 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line? I don't think we know. There's a lot happening. There's a lot that is in transition. And I think right now, just to be consistent with what I've said through all this, and I think you guys agree, we have more questions than answers at this point.
Remember when the transfer portal, everybody thought it was going to be just crazy and chaotic? Who's benefiting the most from it? The have guys. They benefiting the most from it because they get their pick of the litter, right? Meaning, like I say, if school X and Division I AA calls, and then Kirby Smart calls, you're gonna hang up there. Hello, coach. I'm telling you. So let's not act as if the top ain't gonna benefit. I mean, some of this stuff is ridiculous. Like when you go to certain campuses, yeah, man, they can get any individual smoothie they want. I said, well, I like my French berry as well, but do I need an individual smoothie machine? But it's because they can, right? It's because they can. Now, when people start saying you give them $5,000 to go to class, well, the powers that be can do that. If you go, Vanderbilt is saying what, and our academics way worse than Alabama. If we can't beat them, we can't spend what they spend. Period. So it's still not gonna be fair across the board. But the illusion of fairness, BJ, that's not. They pushing that. The illusion, the perception of fair across the board is being pushed. Because like I said, when I go play in the NFL and I started hearing some of these other players say the kind of stuff they had to do, hey, man, how many pair of cleats y'all get for the year? I get a pair of practice cleats and I get a pair of game cleats. How many you get? Oh, man, how many pair of gloves you get? I get one practice glove. I get one game glove. I can get practice gloves. So I'm telling you, it's not going to be fair. So I don't want to act as if it's going to be fair. The same schools are going to get the best players in this scenario as well because they can provide more as well as more attention and obviously resources and visibility. But to know that if I'm going to South Carolina State, I can get potentially $200 to go to class, I'm showing up because that's something. That's something. And I just think that these players give these women athletes a lot of credit because they're going to benefit the most with something like this. Because I'm telling you, when you start talking about popularity, some of these schools, I mean, you think UConn women's basketball ain't the most popular thing on campus at UConn? Let's not kid ourselves. I'm looking forward to it, but I still got to see it because when I look at it, I'm like, well, the fine print don't really look that good. Yeah, but they get something. Okay, something is better than nothing. But how much of that something? That's what I'm looking forward to see.
Well, again, BJ, I think we're looking at a landscape that if anybody tells you they know what it's going to look like in 2 years from now, they're kind of kidding themselves because, I mean, you just don't know how these are going to be applied, what schools will feel comfortable doing, and how much the arms race of benefits takes off, right? I mean, we have seen it. And again, this is one of those things where what's the precursor to this? I mean, it's not that long ago when you go back to when a lot of us listening were in high school or college age in 80s, 90s, early 2000s. You go back and look at Florida State, Miami. Florida State, Miami was a noon kickoff. The end zone was wide open. There were palm trees on the other side. Like you could see it. Now all the stadiums are closed in. Well, man, then you look at it and say, well, man, so-and-so got a new weight room. It's really nice. They got Alabama written on every single barbell and oh, we better do that too. Oh man, they got this. They now have a building just for athletes. We'll call it the Athletic Success Center, and just the athletes can use it. And we got Xboxes and PlayStations and lounges that only the athletes can use. Well, we need one of those too. They got an indoor practice facility where if it rains, they can still practice. If it's nasty out, they can still practice. It's hot outside, they can still practice. We need one of those too. And I think we've seen the proliferation of that all across college athletics. Man, you go here, all of a sudden, and it's not just football. Hey, did you see the softball complex that they just built over there? Man, they're starting to take it serious. We need one of those too. And I think you're seeing the proliferation of baseball stadiums. Look at the SEC baseball stadiums that hold 6, 7, 8,000 people. We need one of those too. And I think you see the arms race that's happened there. I could very well see that happening in the benefits race of, hey, we need to stay ahead of the curve benefits wise so we can ensure we get students simply because we can offer more than anybody else can. And again, who knows how that's going to look even 3 years from now. Very, very strange time around college athletics. We got much more to come here. 3 and Out. We'll count you up towards Braves and Mets game 3 of this 4-game series. But college football around the corner, it's always on our minds. We'll get to more of that next, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along, 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. If you've missed any portion of the show, go to ESPNCoastal.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and you can get an archived version of the show and a podcasted version each and every day here on 3 and Out. We encourage you to do that. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio, as we count you down towards Braves and Mets coming up Game 3 here tonight. But we've talked a lot about college football, what everybody is expecting to see coming up, and obviously Georgia expected to be in that playoff hunt. But BJ, Ben, what do you expect from the rest of the teams in this state? Obviously, Georgia Tech still trying to rebuild. Georgia Southern lost their quarterback. At least the preseason magazines have lower expectations for them, and Georgia State. Who wins more games in 2021, if you have to call it here on June 22nd?
Good question. Really good question. And I do think that for people who are expecting, Georgia Tech just to be really bad or Georgia Southern to, take, this incredible step back, or Georgia State just to not be a factor, Georgia Southern not be a factor, I would disagree with that. And, what's interesting, I believe one of the preseason magazines we picked up had Georgia Southern, I think, last in the Sun Belt in their side, but also had them making a bowl game. So I think, to Ben's point, talking about the Sun Belt earlier, the Sun Belt is really good and really deep and really balanced. Georgia Southern and Georgia State on paper, pretty close when you talk about, the talent they have, the experience they have, the expectations. I think Georgia Tech is in a spot, and we always talk about, right, what your record is reflective of how good you are, but also your schedule. Georgia Tech plays Georgia, Clemson, and Notre Dame. And that's before they get to their division. All of those are non-division games. You play Clemson and Georgia, who might be preseason 2-3, 1-2 in the country, and Notre Dame, who's going to be top 10, before you even get to a division that has North Carolina, who's going to be preseason top 15, Miami, who's going to be preseason top 15, I think a Pitt team that could be preseason top 25, and a Virginia Tech team that's been a traditional power. Like, Georgia Tech might have one of the 2 or 3 toughest schedules in the country. So even if they take steps forward, it may not be fully recognizable in the record. I think of those, it may come down to who wins, Georgia Southern, Georgia State. When you talk about who has the better record, but I think for Georgia Southern and Georgia State specifically, both of those teams absolutely should have bowl aspirations. Those are teams that should be in the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at Georgia Southern and Georgia State schedules, they got an easier path to get to 6 wins. Kevin and BJ, but I just think for me, it's probably good. To me, I mean, from what I've seen of Georgia Southern, I just think they're going to be a team that's going to find a way to win a game they probably shouldn't, and which is probably going to put them over the top. But I say this, so I would go with Georgia Southern, probably going to have the best record. But for me,
and Ben, I believe I'm double checking it. Georgia Southern has Georgia State for homecoming on October 30th in Statesboro. So a big game there.
But I will say this. if Georgia Tech wins 6 games, it would be the most impressive 6 games on any schedule when you look at what they have. I mean, they out of conference is Northern Illinois and I think Kennesaw State. So even they're out of conference, I think Kennesaw State might be the best team or one of the best teams in the Big South. Northern Illinois used to be this team, used to be the Cincinnati's of the world, going to the Orange Bowls back in the day with quarterbacks that play fullback in the NFL. I'm just saying, if you talk about Georgia Tech, Clemson, Miami, North Carolina, Boston College, Virginia Tech, Georgia. I'm just saying, for me, it's probably going to be Georgia Southern because I do think Coach Lunsford got those boys understanding it, and we can get a halfway decent downfield passing game because you're gonna have to throw the ball some, not all the time, to win games. I can see them even with that division being what it's being with, what I was a coach of Carolina becoming the hunter these days. But BJ, I'm just saying, if Coach Lunsford get the 6 wins against bowl eligible, that's ACC of the year type stuff, Coach of the Year caliber type stuff. When you look at what I mean, we talking about quarterbacks. You got to deal with De'Aaron King, you got to deal with DJU, and you got Sam Howell.
Yeah, tough schedule.
I'm sorry, and you got JT Daniels.
Yeah, tough schedules for all 3 of those programs. I'm like you. I'll go Georgia Southern. I think you have some big time opportunities out of conference for both Georgia Southern and Georgia State. You talk about Georgia Southern. Obviously, you have BYU coming to Statesboro. You're talking about FAU. You're talking about Arkansas. I believe Georgia State. Yeah, Georgia State plays Army in early September. They also play at North Carolina and at Auburn when you talk about some of these non-conference games. So, yeah, Georgia Tech's schedule is just brutal. I think, some big-time challenges, obviously, for Georgia Southern and Georgia State, but a chance for both of those programs to make some major statements, obviously in conference, but out of conference as well.
Coach Collins got some. It's going to be rough this year because of who you play. But like I said, they're going to have to win it. Just like I said, Georgia Southern got a chance to probably steal a game. BJ probably should lose. Georgia Tech going to have to steal a game, and unfortunately for them, one of those steal games will probably have to be North Carolina or Miami. So I mean,
yeah, tough sledding there certainly for Jeff Collins and Georgia Tech. I do think Georgia Southern is going to be better than a lot of the preseason expectations have for them here, at least what we're seeing here in the early going. We've got Braves baseball coming up here in just a little bit. No DeGrom, you get Marcus Stroman instead, who, as I read up earlier today, has like a sub-2 career ERA against the Braves. Great. That's what we want to see rolling up today. Also, if you missed it, Braves put Max Fried on the 10-day retroactive injured list with a blister problem. So he will not pitch tomorrow, as we talked about way back at the beginning of the show, BJ. So things just go from bad to just, oh, great. What else can go wrong with this Braves team? But trying to eke out a win tonight means you can at least split the series with the Mets and fall no further behind.
Well, and you need Charlie Morton to be big tonight. I know he was fantastic, right? Last time out was fabulous, was great. You need him to bring it again. I think if he has a good performance, Kev, tonight quietly could get that ERA back into the 3s. I think he's in the very low 4.1, somewhere in that range. So big spotlight on Charlie Morton tonight.
Yeah, we'll have to see how he comes out and performs, but that would be a huge boost, especially given the Max Fried news here this afternoon for the Atlanta Braves. Appreciate McLean Baxley, AJC joining us back in hour number 1. Hawks and Bucks tomorrow, game 1. Also, Rich Stiles of the Back Nine Boys Golf Show and Dan Murphy, ESPN.com, talking about that Supreme Court decision from yesterday. If you missed any portion of the show, ESPNCoastal.com, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Go to our YouTube page, get a daily podcasted version of 3 and Out. We will have the Braves and Mets coming up for you in just a little bit. Morton versus Stroman, a great matchup tonight, and we will see you tomorrow for a Wednesday edition of 3 and Out all across the Southern